Welcome to the Vietnamese Poetry, Literature channel. Today we will listen to the work, Rang Lu, by author Nguyen Loyal. Let's listen. The village was within cannon range of the enemy post. They shoot, as a rule, twice a day, either early in the morning and late afternoon, or at dusk and dusk, or at midnight and when the rooster crows. Most of the cannonballs fell on the sandbar hill next to the big water. In the whole forest of tens of thousands of trees, there was not a single tree that was not injured. Some trees were cut down halfway across their bodies, falling like a storm. At the wound, sap oozes out, overflowing, fragrant, glistening in the harsh summer sun, then gradually bruising, black and thick, forming large clots of blood. In the forest, there are few trees that grow and thrive like that. Next to a newly fallen snakehead tree, 4 or 5 saplings have grown up, their green tops, sharp arrows shooting straight into the sky. There are also few plants that crave sunlight that much. It jumped up very quickly to catch the sunlight in the forest shining down from above in large, straight streams, sparkling with countless golden dust particles flying out from the tree sap, with a rich, fragrant aroma. There were saplings that had just grown to human chest height but were cut in half by cannons. In those trees, the sap is still clear, the oil is still thin, the wound cannot heal, ulcers keep forming, and within 5 or 10 days the tree dies. But there are also trees that are taller than a person's head, with lush branches and leaves like birds with full cilia and feathers. Cannonballs could not kill them, their wounds healed as quickly as on a strong body. They overcame very quickly, replacing fallen trees. Just like that, for the past 2 or 3 years, the snake forest has stretched out its large chest, protecting the village. Standing on that hill of snakes and looking into the distance, as far as the eye could see, there was nothing else but the hills of snakes continuing to the horizon. After 3 years of being in the force, Tanu now has the opportunity to visit the village. The boy Hang met at the big river took him home. The day he left, it only stood up to his waist, didn't know how to carry firewood, only wore a tiny backpack and followed the adults to the fields. Now it carries a rifle. Matt, leading him away. It's still the old road, passing through a corn bed planted with cassava and palm chew trees, climbing up 2 steep slopes that have been cut into steps, going through a dense forest where countless leaves are squeezed on rainy days. Then arriving at the small village. His. But without a guide, Tanu certainly wouldn't dare go alone. The old road is now crisscrossed with tunnels and pits. Every 10 minutes, we come across a prepared trellis. The rod is stretched like a slingshot string, one hit is sure to break the shins in 2, the tongues stick out in pairs, each pair is hung on the trestle. Cold. Little Heng grew up as quiet as the villagers of Xo Man. He wore a hooded hat that he asked for from a certain liberation soldier, a long ba-ba shirt that covered his ass, a loincloth, and a gun slung across his back to look like a real soldier. A summary. On the way to take Tanu back to the village, Heng recounted the changes after Tanu was away. Pid became secretary of the party cell. Tanu suddenly remembered the memories of Mai, his wife who was killed by the enemy. Returning to the village, Tanu was warmly welcomed by everyone. A heavy hand gripped his shoulder like an iron pliers. He turned back. Uncle Met. The old man was still as arrogant as before, his beard was now long enough to reach his chest and still shiny black, his eyes were still bright and slanted upside down, the scar on his right cheek was still shiny. He was naked, his chest was as tight as a large soapberry. The old man pushed Tanu away, looked at him from head to toe, then burst out laughing. Ha ha, wearing shrimp and rushing back, you force. Okay. Tanu understood what the old man meant. He never complimented, good. Good. When he was most satisfied, he just said, okay. When old man Met spoke, everyone fell silent. He spoke as if giving orders. He was 60 years old but his voice was still loud and resounding in his chest. How many nights will the commander let me go home? 1 night, okay. Give for 1 night, return for 1 night, give for 2 nights, return for 2 nights, you must comply properly. Tonight you stay at my house. A brief summary. Mr. Met led Tanu to the water trough at the top of the village. Even though he had washed in the stream, Tanu was still moved to let the village's water tap splash all over his body like before. For dinner at Mr. Met's house, in addition to the mint soup cooked lightly in a bamboo tube, there were also some sour fish. That's a special dish that Mr. Met treats to people who come back from far away. Tanu opened the tube of dry food and gave the old man a spoonful of salt. The old man said, I also have half a can of salt from the district as a reward for Dit the day he went to the Emulation Soldiers Congress. He came back and divided it equally for each kitchen. But that's for the sick. And if you give me this, I'll eat it. The old man did not add salt to the soup. He divided a few seeds for each person. They ate each seed raw, holding it in their mouths for a long time to hear the rich saltiness gradually dissolve. White rice with lots of palm chew roots. The old man held a bowl of rice and said clearly, this year the village is not hungry. There is enough rice to eat throughout the season. But it must be saved and stored in each kitchen for 3 years. You went to the revolution, the commander also taught you, fighting the Americans must fight long. Then suddenly, the old man asked, are your 10 fingers still missing like that? Can't grow anymore? Yes. The old man put down his rice bowl and said angrily. But the village already knows, right? Okay. A finger with 2 joints still can shoot a gun. Have you gone through the snake forest near the big water? It's still alive. There is no tree as strong as the snake plant in our land. The mother tree falls, the baby tree grows. Guess it killed all this snake forest? Hey, eat it. The rice we make from the straw people is the best in this mountain forest, my child. After finishing the meal, someone from the side of the house beat the bell 3 times longer. The villagers flocked to Mr. Met's house. The girls extinguished the torches on the stairs before entering the house. There were also people, old ladies, holding a blazing torch, walking straight in, shining it on Tanu's face, looking at it again and again carefully, then throwing the torch into the kitchen. The fire shot up and started to burn. The old men had not yet stepped up the stairs and said loudly, where is Tanu? Have you fed him enough, Mr. Met? An old woman's voice said, men, move out a bit so Dit can sit with you. Hey kid, sit here. Tanu looked up. Dit sat down in front of him, her legs folded to one side, her hand pulling the skirt to cover her heels. Tanu suddenly felt a cold sensation on his face and chest. Roof. In front of you is Mai. He didn't expect Dit to grow up to be so similar to Mai. Dit's slightly round nose is now straight and smaller, his eyebrows are so dark that they cover his wide, calm, transparent eyes. Dit looked at Tanu with those eyes for a long time, while 4 or 5 children, each competing for a seat near Ms. Dit. Then she asked Tanu, her voice a bit cold. Comrade, do you have any papers when you return? I don't understand. What paper? The superior's letter granting the leave. Without paper, you can't escape. The committee must arrest it. Tanu laughed. He intended to joke, saying he missed the village so much that he could escape to visit the village for a day, but looking at Dit's stern eyes and hearing the waiting silence around him, he opened his shirt pocket, took out a small piece of paper and gave it to her. Report to commune political comrades. Dit took the piece of paper and looked at it in the light of the fire. Dozens of heads gathered together, a few children stuttering to spell. I read it for a long time, rereading it 3 times. Mr. Met asked. Is that right? Is it allowed? Dit gave it back to Tanu. Now she smiles. That's right, it has the commander's signature. Why did you come back for just 1 night? Then she replied. It's okay. Come back one night to show your face to the village. We all keep reminding you. The laughter was silent for a moment and then filled the small house again. It has the commander's signature. That's good. Just one night, leaving tomorrow, too little, what a pity. Mr. Met's loud voice drowned out everything. Ha ha. Okay. The old man pushed 2 or 3 children away, walked over and sat down in front of the fire, next to Tanu. The old man tapped the pipe on the apple man's head, broke a small bamboo stick from the stall, carefully removed all the cigarette butts from the pipe, then looked up and looked around. Everyone sat down and waited. The old man began to speak. Outside, there was a light rain at night, whispering like a light wind. The old man did not raise his voice was very low. Old people already know. Some young people know, some don't know yet. As for the children, they don't know yet. The old man glared at the children. They felt the seriousness in the old man's words. They each sat silently, staring at the old man's mouth. Tanu, your brother Tanu is back. The old man placed a firm hand on Tanu's shoulder. Mr. Tanu, how many times have I told you this? There he is, he went to liberate the army to fight the enemy, now he comes back to visit the village for one night, the superiors let him go home for one night, it has the commander's signature, the secretary has seen it. There it is. It is a streak person. His parents died early, so this Exo-man village raised him. His life is miserable, but his stomach is as clean as the spring water of our village. Tonight I will tell his story to the whole village, to celebrate his return to the village. Those of the straw people who have ears, who have a heart that loves the mountains and the water, should listen, and remember. After I die, you have to tell it to your children and grandchildren. A brief summary. Mr. Met recounted an old story, when Tanu and Mai were young, but actively contributed to keeping Kadris hidden in the forest. The officer in the forest at that time was Mr. Quay. Since the day America, Diem came to these mountains and forests, there has not been a single day that he has not gone searching, not a single night that his dogs and guns have not barked throughout the forest. But the villagers of Exo-man are still proud. In 5 years, not a single officer has been captured or killed by the enemy in the forest of this village. At first, young people raised and guarded the Kadris. When American, Diem found out, he arrested the young man. It hanged Schwart's neck on a fig tree in the village. Whoever raises communists, look at that. Then it banned young people from going to the forest. Old women and old men replace young men to support Kadris. It knows again. He killed Ms. Nyan, cut off her head, tied her hair and hung it on the tip of a gun. Finally, the children replace the old man and woman. Among that group, the most enthusiastic were Tanu and Mai. Whenever Tanu goes to the fields, Mai goes with the Kadris. Whenever Mai stays home to take care of Dit for her mother, Tanu goes. There was also a day when both of us went together. They stay out in the forest at night. Letting the officers sleep alone in the forest one night made me feel uneasy. If the enemy finds you, who will lead the officers to run away? Mr. Quay asked. Aren't you afraid of being captured by the enemy? It kills like Mr. Zhu, like Mrs. Nyan. Tanu was lying in Mr. Kiat's lap, sat up, and threw out his bag. Mr. Met said, Kadris are the party. The party still exists, the mountains and water still exist. In the forest, Mr. Quay taught Tanu and Mai to read. He split the bamboo, crushed it, and assembled it into several boards as big as 3 hands. The 3 brothers burned the smoke from the bamboo board to make it pitch black, then used the sap of the weeping bamboo tree and spread it on a thick layer that couldn't be erased even with water. Tanu traveled 3 days to Nok Lin Mountain and brought back a barley full of white stones for chalk. Mai studies better than Tanu. In 3 months she can read words, write whatever she wants, and in 6 months she can do 2-digit math. Tanu learns more slowly, but often gets angry. When he learns the long letter I, he forgets that if he adds a hook, the letter O is read as A. One time, when he lost to Mai, he broke the bamboo board in front of Mai and Kuei, and went to the stream to sit alone all day. Mr. Kuei coaxed him not to speak. Mai came out to coax her, and she wanted to beat Mai. Mai also sat there with him. Tenu won't come back, I won't come back either. Go home, Mr. Tenu. Mai made another board for you. He picked up a rock and hit himself on the head, bleeding profusely. Mr. Kuei had to bandage it. That night, he held it in a cave. He whispered, in the future, if America and Diem kill you, Tenu must become an officer in your place. Without learning how to become a good officer, Tenu pretended to sleep and didn't listen. He secretly wiped away his tears. The next morning, it called Mai behind the rock hole. Mai, tell me what the letter O with hooks means. And the letter Kai that comes after that word, the letter Kai has a big belly. Mai turned away, not daring to smile. He wrote the word, big belly, on the board he just made for Tenu. He tried to speak softly but his voice was still clear. I remember very well, that word calf. Yes, my head is so stupid. Tenu often forgets words, but when going on mountain roads, his head shines strangely. It contacted Mr. Kuei from the commune to the district. It never goes off the beaten path. The enemy surrounded the roads, he climbed a tall tree and looked around, then tore through the forest and walked, passing through all the sieges. Crossing the river, it does not like to wade in calm water, so it chooses a strong waterfall and swims across, over the water, riding on the ice waterfall like an orca. It says, when the water is calm, the American, Diem usually obeys, but when the water is strong, he doesn't expect it. But that time, Tenu came to a waterfall in Dak Nong River, just wrapped Mr. Kiat's letter to the district in a dong leaf, held it in his mouth and was about to cross the waterfall, when the gun muzzle of the ambushed enemy pointed at his cold ear. Tenu I just had time to swallow the letter. A summary. Tenu was captured by the enemy and brutally tortured. 3 years later, Tu escaped from prison and returned to the village. Mr. Kuei was seriously injured in an ambush. Before he died, he wrote a letter of encouragement to the villagers. XO Man. Listen to him, everyone prepares to fight. News of XO Man village sharpening spears reached the ears of the enemy at Dak Ha Station. In the middle of the rice harvest season, they gathered a platoon just in time for Mai and Tenu's first son to be born. The same commander from last year, Duck. It wears a blood-red hat. It roared. Tenu again, no one else. If that tiger hadn't been killed early, it would have caused chaos in the mountains and forests. Mr. Med and Tenu led the young people into the forest. They didn't go far, just hanging around tree stumps and rock holes around the village, following the enemy. They stayed in the village for 4 nights. Its whip comes from no one. The sound of crying woke up the whole village. Duck was holding a pistol. If anyone leaves the village, if caught, they will be shot and killed on the spot. No one can get out. Only the small, agile Dit, every dusk, crawls along the water trough to bring rice to the forest for Mr. Met, Tenu and the young people. At dawn on the 4th day, they caught her when she came back from the forest. They let her stand in the middle of the yard, loaded the bullets and slowly fired 1 bullet at a time. They didn't hit her, the bullets just grazed her ear, singed her hair, and plowed the ground around Dit's little legs. Her dress was torn to shreds. He cried out loud, but then on the 10th pill he wiped his tears and from then on fell silent. It stood silently among the soldiers. With each bullet explosion, its slender body jerked up, but its eyes still looked at the enemy with a strange calmness, as calm as the eyes of the secretary now. Unable to do anything to her, Duck used his final blow. It captured Mai. Catching the female tiger and cub will surely lure the male tiger back. Tenu clearly heard Duke's words. He hid at the base of a tree next to the water trough at the beginning of the village. From there, you can see the village yard clearly. His hands clutched the tree stump as the soldiers, 10 of them, led Mai to the middle of the yard. Mai carries her baby on her back. The baby is not even a month old. Everyone says it looks strangely like Tanu. Unable to go to Kon Tum to buy cloth, Tanu had to tear his blanket in half to make a shawl for Mai to carry her baby. The boy lay in that blanket, sleeping soundly on his mother's back. Duck asked, "Where is your husband, that communist nigger?" Mai picked up the child on her back and looked up at Duck with her big eyes. "Are you dumb, bitch?" He shouted at the soldiers. "That's right." One of the fattest soldiers glanced at Duck, held a long iron rod and walked next to Mai. It dragged its tongue and licked around its lips once, then slowly raised the iron rod. Mai let out a scream. She quickly took off the sling, just in time to turn the baby over to her stomach as the iron bar fell on her back. "Where is Tanu, huh?" The second iron hit Mai in the chest. She flipped the baby onto her back. He hit her in the back again, and she flipped him over to her chest. The rain of iron trees became more and more intense. Mai's screams were no longer heard. I just heard the baby cry once and then silence. There was only the sound of the iron bar hitting down. Tanu left his tree stump. It's a fig tree. He had ripped off dozens of figs without even realizing it. He jumped up. A hand held his shoulder. Uncle Met's voice is heavy. "No way, Tanu. Let me wait." Tanu pushed the old man's hand away. The old man repeated, "Tanu." Tnu turned back. The old man could no longer see Tanu. Where his eyes are now are two large flames. The old man let go of Tanu's shoulder. A fierce scream. Tanu jumped into the middle of the soldiers. "I don't know what I did. I only saw the fat enemy soldier lying on his back in the middle of the yard." Duck ran into the house. The sound of bullets clicking around him. Then Mai hugged the child and crawled into his chest. His two arms, as wide as strong iron wings, hugged Mai and her child tightly. "Cannibals, it's me, it's Tanu." Tanu could not save Mai's life. Yes, Tanu couldn't save Mai and her mother. Old Man Met's voice was still deep and heavy. The old man clumsily turned around and wiped a tear from his eye. Suddenly the old man spoke loudly. Tanu couldn't save his wife and children. That night Mai died. And the child is dead. The fat soldier hit her with an iron bar across her stomach. When her mother fell, there was no time to cover her. Remember, Tanu, you couldn't save your wife's life either. As for you, they arrested you, you had only 2 empty hands, they tied you up. As for me, at that time I was standing behind the fig tree. I see them tying you up with jungle rope. I didn't jump out to save you. Tao also only has 2 empty hands. I didn't come out, I turned around and went into the forest. I went looking for the young men. The young men also went into the forest, looking for spears. Do you hear me, children, do you hear me? Remember, write down. After I die, you still have to live and tell your children and grandchildren. They held guns, I have to hold spears. They tied Tanu tightly with jungle rope, carried him and threw him into the corner of his house, then dragged him away to eat Boi's pig. Tanu is located in the corner of the house. The darkness was thick. He thought, surprised to find himself very calm, the child is dead. Mai is probably dead, Tanu is also about to die. Who will be the officer? When there is an order from the party to fight, who will be the leader of the Exo-Man villagers to fight the enemy? Uncle Met is old. Okay, there are also young people. Then kid will grow up. That girl is stronger than her sister. It's okay. I'm just sorry for Tanu. Tanu didn't live to see the day he took up arms and stood up to the villagers. Duck did not kill Tanu right away. He lit a big fire at his house, brought all the villagers there, untied Tanu, and then told everyone. I heard that you guys have sharpened your machetes and spears, right? Okay, if you want to hold a machete or a spear, look at Tanu's hand. He raised his chin and signaled to the fattest soldier. They were all prepared. The soldier opened his bag and took out a handful of rags soaked in soapberry oil. It wrapped a rag around Tanu's 10 fingers. Then it picked up a fire stick. But Duck said, "Leave it to me." It grabbed the fire tree. Tanu did not make a sound. He rolled his eyes at Duck. It laughed loudly. It brought the fire stick close to his face. Look carefully at the face of this communist who wants to hold a weapon. Your fate is not the fate of holding a spear. Give up the dream of holding a spear, okay? A beast finger caught fire. 2 fingers, 3 fingers. There is nothing as rich as soap sap. The fire caught very quickly. 10 fingers have become 10 torches. Tanu closed his eyes, then opened them, glaring. Oh my God. Parents. He didn't feel the fire at his fingertips anymore. He heard fire burning in his chest, burning in his stomach. His blood is salty on the tip of his tongue. His teeth have bitten his lip. He did not cry out. Mr. Quay said, "The communists don't bother to complain." Tanu didn't bother to complain. But oh my God. It's on fire, it's on fire. Mr. Quay. On fire. No, Tanu won't cry. Or not. Duke's startling laughter. The old men jumped up. The soldiers pushed aside. The screams of the people. The sound of footsteps echoed around the house. Who is that? Tanu screamed. Just 1 hour. But his screams suddenly echoed into more intense screams. The sound of kill. The sound of people stepping on the floor was loud. The sound of soldiers screaming. Uncle Met's voice roared, "Shut up." Cutting off. Mr. Met was right. Mr. Met was standing there, a long spear in his hand. Duck was under Mr. Met's spear. And the youth, all the youth in the village, each had a shiny machete, machetes sharpened with Tanu stone brought from the top of Nok Lin Mountain. English Broi said, calmly. Tanu, Tanu. Wake up yet? Here, we killed them all. All 10 of you, here. With spears and spears. Here it is. The fire has gone out on Tanu's 10 fingertips. But the large fire in the middle of the house is still red. The corpses of 10 enemy soldiers were scattered around that fire. Mr. Met leaned his spear on the floor and his voice echoed. So it's begun. Fire up. All the old people, the young people, the men, the women, each must find a spear, a lure, a machete. Those who don't have one can sharpen spikes, 500 spikes. Fire up. The gong sounds. Standing on the Snake Hill near the big water, all night long I heard the whole Exo-Man forest roaring and vibrating. And fire burns all over the forest. A summary. Tanu told the villagers that during a battle, he strangled the station commander to death with his crippled hands while he was holed up in the cellar. Tanu left again. Mr. Met and Dit took him out to the snake forest near the big water. Last night's cannon fire knocked down 4 or 5 large oak trees. The sap oozed out of the accumulated wounds, glistening in the summer sun. Around it countless saplings are growing. There are new trees emerging from the ground, sharp as pear points. 3 people stood there looking into the distance. As far as the eye can see, there is nothing else to see but the continuous forests of snakeheads running to the horizon. At the end of the work, please support me with the like button and subscribe to the channel to listen to more works.